Hello and welcome to another mod spotlight. This time I have more enchantments, which adds, well, more enchantments. As you can see, there's a lot of items to cover, so I won't be showing how all of them work and will explain how some work instead. But to begin, let's start with venom and poison. Now, thanks to this nice creeper assistance here, you can see how, well, it poisons it. And if I shoot it, it will poison again. So pretty much what these do is they do exactly what they sound like. They'll poison the target. The bow only gets Venom 1 though, or Poison 1, while the sword gets Venom 2. The next enchantments are Ice Aspect and Frost. Ice Aspect slows the foe and also gives mining fatigue, while the bow just gives the slowness. And the final enchantment here is Mending. Now, Mending actually heals the mob instead of hurting it. It's more useful in teams and isn't really useful in solo because even if I have a pigman here, if I hit it with Mending, it would still get hostile. Also, if you combine Mending with Poison on the bow, it will actually cause a regeneration effect from what I heard. Although I can't seem to be hitting the pigman here. Yeah, there you go, regeneration. And just to mention now, some of these enchantments are more aimed at PvP than just soloing around and exploring world and survival, Mending being a good example, but Ice Aspect and Venom are ones that I find that are good in any situation, really. Let's move on to some of the more unique enchantments. The first one here is Leech, which heals you for 10% of the damage you deal, making it good for both PvP and survival. Hello, pigman. Next we have Execution, which in my opinion isn't the most useful unless you actually run mods. What it does is the lower the target's health is, the more damage it deals. So against vanilla mobs or even players where you only have 20 health, it won't be that powerful. But if you fight like a boss as someone like 200 health, you'll see a big difference as the boss starts to lose health and start dealing a good bit more damage. Then there is Vorpal, which increases the head drop and occasionally will deal triple damage. And now on to the bow ones. I guess I better show these. The first one is Explosive. And the second is Quick Draw. Explosive does well, what you'd think. When it lands, it explodes. Which is pretty cool, although you probably want to stay in back. And Quick Draw is, it will instantly charge the bow up to full speed, so you can just spam arrows. Which is pretty cool as well. Okay, now for one of my favorite enchantments. It's an axe-only enchantment called Cleave, which I just love because it turns the axe into a viable combat weapon. Usually it's just the point behind the sword and damage, so it's not really that popular, but with Cleave, it becomes very good at PvP or survival. I'd say more so survival, but what it does is AoE damage. This was perfect if you have a good mob grinder and you just want to kill them quickly kind of thing. These next enchantments are vanilla-like in style, and they work like Smite or Bandit Arthropods and deal extra damage to a certain type of mob. There's Diffusion for creepers, Disjunction for endermen, Spellbane for witches, and Dousing for blazes and magma cubes. So if you want more of those conditional sharpness-like enchantments, you have the option to them as well. Then we have Poison Protection, which works on a full set of armor, and it does as it says. If you have a full set, you'll pretty much be immune to poison, I believe, or at least a few pieces of a high enchant level. So that's pretty cool if you want to resist the poison effect of those darn cave spiders. Next there's Knowledge, which increases the experience you gain when you pick up Experience Orb. Another great one if you want to be grinding mobs. Then on the chest plate we have Berserking, which makes you deal more damage when you're low on health, so it's very good in PvP as well as survival against bosses or such, so if you're about to die you might get that super high hitting move to finish off your foe. Steadfast on the other hand is more for PvP enchantment, and it reduces the knockback you take. So it's really only useful if your opponent's using a knockback sword or a punch bow, and in survival you really won't see much of an impact on it. Then on the legs we have Agility and Mobility. I can't really show you Agility because it's a very rare trigger chance to just negate damage. Pretty much you'll have a slim chance of dodging your foe and you'll take no damage from that hit. So it's very good in PvP and probably survival in most situations, but it's hard to know when it occurs. Now for the last two, Fleetfoot and Mobility, I'll just show you these. What Fleetfoot does is it makes you move quicker. See? I take off the boots, it will zoom out because I'm a little slower. And what Mobility does, it's a really cool one for any situation, survival or PvP. It allows you to just walk straight up. Pretty much it makes you like a horse. Just walk straight up an incline like this. 1 block incline. So in PvP, I'd say mobility is good in case a foe is trying to escape you and you miss a jump kind of thing. That way you can just run straight after them. And fleet foot is of course good for extra speed. And in survival, they're just good for getting around or fleeing for your life. Now the next enchantment is Harvest, and it affects each tool differently. It currently does not work for shovels, but besides that, it works for all the tools and has a really cool effect. Now, for the axe, if you cut down a tree, it will cut down the entire tree, just like a lumber axe from Tinkerers. Now, for the hoe, it has a really cool effect of being AoE harvest. So I break that, it will break all the crops there, so you can easily harvest the fields of crops. And for the pickaxe, it will mine all ores of the same type nearby. So if I mine that, it will break all the coal, and I'll get all the coal. It works for this shape as well, where they were next to each other, as well as shapes like this. So pretty much, Harvest turns your pickaxe into Vein Miner, your axe into a lumber axe, and your hoe into an AoE harvester. And one thing I really love about Harvest as compared to like Vein Miner or Tree Capitator is that it allows you to have them in the game, but wait till late game when you really need them as opposed to early game. Because in the early game, such mods can make it a bit easier, but by late game, mining and tree cutting can be tedious. So instead of having a mod to just make it all the time, you can have it as a chip you can legitimately work for and get, which I think adds a nice twist to such abilities. And the final enchantment is Resurrection, which you can get by enchanting books. Now, how it works is simple. If you were to die, like a huge fall, you don't. Instead, the book is destroyed, and just to prove that fall would kill me, I'm going to go back up and do it again. Okay, no book this time, and whee! Ow. Well, that does it for the enchantments, but there's still one other feature of the mod that I didn't cover yet, which is charms. What charms are, they're rare drops you can get from mobs. I'm not sure the exact rate, or if there's any mobs that don't drop them, but what they do is you just have them in your inventory and you gain the enchantment effect always just for having it there. For Resurrection, I assume it also would destroy the charm on use. From what I hear, having a sharpness charm would also work on a bow kind of thing because it's not unique just to swords, so it will just improve your damage like any weapon you equip to have sharpness. And currently, it doesn't matter where in your inventory it is. It can be hotbar, inventory, or such as long as it's here. It probably won't work with backpacks though if you have a backpack mod. Anyway, that about covers the mod with all its enchantments and the charms. I should also note that if there is any enchantment you don't like, you can disable it through the config by a true or false option. So some of these enchantments might be a bit more PvP oriented and you don't really want them in your survival world, so you can turn them off, while some might be a bit more survival focused and you don't want them on your PvP server, so you can turn them off. So you might not want these extra mob damage enchantments appearing on your sword, so you can just turn them off if you don't really want them to be part of your game. And in the config, there also is Silence enchantment. That's an upcoming PvP one from what I heard. Also, from what I heard, there will be more charm options in the config in the future. Currently, you can just turn them on or off, but supposedly in the future, we'll be able to customize the drop rate as well as require them on your hotbar instead of inventory and stuff like that. Anyway, I think that about wraps up this mod spotlight. Overall, I think the mod is amazing and has enchantments for everyone. Personally, I love ones like the Harvest and Execution. Not as a big fan of the extra mob damage ones though, but with the config I can easily turn off the ones I don't want and keep the ones I do. And with the new charm system that came out in the 1.7 version, this mod's only getting more awesome and I can't wait to see what it gets in the future. Well, that's all for this mod spotlight, so until next time, goodbye.